Here we go. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Tom Murphy, and this is Trinidad Now on Trinidad Times Television. With me today is lifelong resident Tony Mattorano, who's running for City Council here in 2017. Tony, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Okay, Tony, you're, I don't know, number 8 or whatever of all the people, so I'm getting a little tired, but I've got to keep my energy up, okay, because this is exhausting work talking to people. As I've done with everybody else, I want to explain to people, we've gone through the questions. I'm going to ask everybody the same questions. You may not know some things because you weren't there for some things.
Right.
But I want to be fair, and I keep stating this over to everybody because I don't want people to feel like they're mistreated. It's okay to say that you don't know something. The only thing that I'm going to do is occasionally ask follow-up questions, you know, if I want clarification on something. So, but the easiest thing that we're going to start with is we're going to talk about you. Let me go back to this. Your personal background. Tell me where you were born, where you've lived, educated, your spouse, the number of children you have, and grandchildren.
Okay, I was born back in 1943 to my father and mother, Jim and Annie Mattorano. My dad is a second generation from Sicily, Palermo, Sicily. I married to Kathy Latuda Mattorano, and been married for 48 years. We have 4 children, which is one who's deceased, and I have 5 grandchildren. I really enjoy the surrounding area of Trinidad. Of course, I've been here all my life. I served on the United States Army National Guard for 6 years. I have was on a board member for 21 years on the Crossroads Alcohol Treatment Services. I was probably chairman.
Before we get that, though, let's because let me ask that question. I just want to know about your personal background.
Okay.
You're asking the questions before I do, or answering them. So I'll still ask all the questions, but that's the next question. So, but we're good though. Is there anything about your personal background? I mean, people may not know because not everybody's from Trinidad, but now you have the diner down on Main Street.
Now, would that be the second part or the?
Well,
Still under the first part?
It's still under the first part. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've been self-employed since 1971. Mm-hmm. I started off with the oil business, had 2 service stations, jobbership. I had that for about 8, 9 years. Then I went into the refuse collection service, and I did that for about 17 years. City was in the business, so was the county. I think there was another local person in. And when I finished after the 17 years, I was the only hauler there. And of course, after that, just kind of like retired. I sold that out, retired for a little bit, about 6 months, and decided to open up some apartments. I built 24 units of apartments. And in the midst of doing that, I was in 96 to 97, we built them. In 98, I went into the manufactured home business. And that was really good up until 2008. 2008, the industry of loans and trying to get somebody a loan to acquire a house was almost impossible. So that basically by 2010 that all went away. And after that, I got into Lee's Barbecue. My brother and I both ran that for a little bit, and you know, being brothers, sometimes it just doesn't work. So I left that one, retired for another.
Let me just interject. The reason I'm here is because of my brother. So we don't have to go any farther.
Yeah. And so I retired for about 3 years after that, and couldn't stand it anymore. My wife, in between there, had an open heart surgery, so we took care of that. And after she got back on her feet, I decided that I was going to go back into business again. And she said, "What?" And I said, "I'm going to open up a restaurant." And she told me, she says, "You got to be out of your mind." And you know, it's always been something in my blood that I've always wanted to do. Right. And so that's what we did. My wife made it clear that it was me opening up the restaurant, not her. You know, we're both up in our age already, and I wasn't going to expect my wife to do what I'm doing.
Right.
Well, in the last 2 years, we've made it a very, very big success. The first year in business, we did 92,000 people, and we served 92,000 people. And it looks like this year, it looks like it's going to be another 92 to 94,000. And I'm very proud of that, because restaurant business is one of the most difficult businesses to make work, and we're making it work. I think I came into the business at the right time. I think Trinidad needed a good restaurant. They were struggling, trying to find a place open. We're open 7 days a week. We're open from 6 to 8 o'clock, and it makes it easy for people to say, "Hey, let's go to Tony's because we know he's open." Right. Okay, and so it makes it easy for people to come to the restaurant. We've done very well with it. But other than that, they're at the restaurant talking to different people, asking me different things about the city, because I've lived here all my life. Probably know 75% of everybody in this community. And it was talking about different things that city is doing. And of course, most of them come up and they talk about the marijuana. Mm-hmm. You know, so I don't know if we're supposed to be.
That'll be a question in this segment.
Yeah. So it's you know, I don't think I would be doing much different than what the city council is doing now.
Right.
Let's
because we're staring into that.
Yeah.
So we know about your past with all your work history. Let's talk now, because you had started to address this. Tell me about your past public involvement. I mean, you know, what you were leading into a little while ago.
Okay. Back, I'm going to say it. Well, I'm going to say it was probably almost when I was in the trash business. I had one of the employees from at that time it was called Fisher Peak Alcohol Treatment Services, and it was up at the old hospital, and we were actually the landlords of that hospital, and we were leasing out to other people. Right. We were an alcohol treatment services, but if anybody wanted a room or a business set up or something like that, they could come to us and we would lease it to them. And we were paying utility bills like you wouldn't believe. It was just terrible. And, but anyhow, this one employee that was working there asked me if I would be a board member. And I said, I don't know if I really want to do that or not. He says, but we really need somebody to come and help us out. So I says, all right. So I joined him. At the same time I joined, Glenn Davis joined as well. And that's where I first met Glenn Davis. We were there for about 6 months, and I saw that, and so did Glenn, that we weren't going to make it in that place. We couldn't be landlords. We're not to be landlords. We were to be alcohol treatment services.
Right.
And so we divorced ourselves from that situation. Of course, we carried a $30,000 fuel bill too, utility bill. So we ended up at the old clinic, which is over there by Trinidad Builders. The building was right behind to the south, and that was our home. That's where we started. We had a director, and we also had a clinical director, and we had a board that was about, if I remember right, I think it was 12 or 13 people. It was a big board. And so we were doing very, very good, but we were having problems with things working like it should. So we decided to combine the director and the clinical director as one person. And so we opened that up, and the clinical person had to make sure that so the clinical director had to, let me shut this off.
So it's okay. It happens to everybody nowadays.
The clinical director and the director, they were able to apply for it if they qualified. Well, we ended up putting it out for bid, and we had like 98 applicants. It was unbelievable.
Right.
So we picked out 5 of them to come in on an interview. And I don't know why, but it didn't. Only one showed up. That was heartbreaking, you know. You go through all this work trying to hire a person, and you think you got it down, and then only one person shows up. But you know, I guess it's just the way it's supposed to work. The guy that showed up would probably be the one that we was going to hire anyhow. And he is still with Crossroads. I had served my 6 years. It was a 6-year term. I got off, and my wife had went on, and then in a year, I went back on again because I had to stay off a year.
Right.
And but in that year, they had some serious problems, and the director that we had hired, Pueblo Alcohol Treatment Services took over and asked him to come up there. They offered him better money, and so we lost him. They had another guy come in that they had hired, and it was a mess. So when I went back, just before I went back, I went up to talk to Leroy, and he was the clinical director that we had hired when I was there. And I told him, I said, why can't we just combine Trinidad and Pueblo together and make it one unit and just have a satellite in Trinidad? And he says, well, I've been thinking about that, Leroy had said. He says, I would like to extend it all the way to Alamosa, and we'd have a satellite there, satellite in Trinidad, maybe a little office in Walsenburg, and then Pueblo would hover over the whole thing. And I said, you know, I think that would really work. And I think I can get it approved from our board to get that done. So I joined the board back again, and that's what we did. We took 5 board members from here, went to Pueblo. And so we were on that board. I was on that from the start to the finish. I was on that board for 21 years. It was a very big success. When you say a success, we were able to serve a lot of people. But you know, a lot of people say success is how many people have you cleaned up in alcohol treatment services. Well, that's a very difficult thing, and we were running about a 6%, which was a high number. And so we got everything taken care of. We had the utilities paid off. We had everything done. Leroy was a fantastic director, done some great jobs, and he is still at the Alcohol Treatment Services of Crossroads in Pueblo, which still takes care of Trinidad. I was on the board when we built this building down here in Carbon Arroyo. Well, after that, that's when I started my first business, and so I didn't have the time to spend on that. So I went ahead and started my new business, which was Sunset Exxon, and I did that for 9 years. Very successful in that. We served a lot of people. It seemed like the answer to my success in everything that I've done has been service. We serve people, and by doing that, you take care of people. People like to be taken care of, you know. Mm-hmm. And so we've done that for about 9 years. We have a history in our background. I have an uncle and also my dad. They used to collect trash, garbage. They used to pick up the raw garbage from the restaurants, and they used to feed hogs with it. So there was a background about me that was in the refuse business. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get back into that. So Frank Giuliano had his business, wasn't doing too well, and at the time he was, I think he was not feeling real good, or they had some problems of some sort. But I went ahead and offered to buy him, and I bought him out. And he was running to Walsenburg, and he was also doing some here. And it took me about 3 years before I could break the ice on making some money mm-hmm. With the refuse business. And it took a lot of legwork, took a lot of marketing, college and hospital, and old age home, and a lot of the businesses, and done very well up until I think it was 89. A person came to me and said, you need to get up with times and you need to start going automated. Sounded good, so I looked into it, and me and this one guy, we started it, and we went into a fully automated system. And when we did that, it just killed the city. City had 3-man operation. I had a 1-man operation, mm-hmm. and they had 3 trucks, 9 employees. I had 1 truck, 1 employee, and doing exactly the same amount of work. And when we used to go out and take all these automated containers out, the people that were with the city, they see us bring these big old 90-gallon containers out there, pretty, brand new, and they said, well, how can we get one of those? And I said, all you got to do is sign up.
Right.
And so they signed up. That in the month, 1 month in June, we signed up 500 people. It was amazing. Bill Cordova was the city manager, and he had went to the city council, and he told them, he says, you know, we need new trucks. If we put new trucks on, we're going to have to raise our rates. Mattorano has already taken 500 of our customers. He says, you know, I think we need to do something. And so they decided to turn it loose, and I took over the whole thing. And they asked me how many people I was going to hire of theirs, and I said, none. So I had 2 employees when I first started, so I still had 2 employees. So I bought another truck, and we handled the whole city with 2 trucks, and still got done before 8 hours.
All right, so when you say automated, what do you mean by automated?
Automated means that you pull up to the container, you don't even get out of the truck.
Right.
And it hooks up to it, dumps it, sets it back down, shove it back in place, and you go on to the next one.
Okay.
And same way with the residents. The residents used to push their container out, and our truck that we had on a residential used to be able to sit on the left-hand side and operate the truck from the left-hand side, and you'd drive up, and you would, if the container wasn't sitting perfectly, because a residential container was only 90 gallons, if it wasn't, you could reach out there and turn it
Right.
with your hand, and then you would drive up to it and hook up to it, dump it, set it back down, and bam, you were gone. And it was amazing. I mean, I don't understand why they went back to the rear load system. It's dirty, it's not clean, it's very difficult for employees. The employee really feels like a trash hauler,
Right.
instead of a mechanic operator or something like that.
Right.
You know, I could have sent my people out with a suit and never have to worry about them getting dirty.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And we did very well. County got out of the business, so we ended up going into the county, took care of all that. I did that all the way up until 1995.
Okay. Hold that thought right a second. I've got to change a tape. So we're going to pick up right there. This isn't where we're going to break, but I get my tape.
I need to backtrack just a little bit.
Okay.
When I got out of high school, I graduated in 1962. I went to work construction. I didn't go to college. I wasn't college material. Just something not for me. And so I went working construction. I worked construction for about 6 years. And in the midst of that 6 years, I was a very young foreman. I was a foreman for 2 different companies. And of course, when you're that young, you're foreman over people that are a lot older than you. But I was very easy to get along with. I wasn't a person just because I was young going to tell people what to do and how to do it and stuff like that. I knew that a lot of these people knew a lot more than I did, and I utilized that to my benefit. I would not challenge them in any way about what they knew, and if I had to show them a different way or something like that, I'd do it very tactful and stuff.
Right.
But I was a foreman there, but I looked at these people that worked in these constructions. They were underground. Some of them were underground constructions, water diversions and stuff like that. And a lot of it was concrete work and stuff. And I looked at some of these old timers that were working there. Gosh, they looked rough. And I said to myself, is that what I want to look like when I get that age?
Right.
And so I decided, no more, I'm coming home. And I came back home, and this was back in 1960, I'm going to say 1968, early 1968. And I went to work for Rainbow Bread. I was hauled bread around. Terrible job. Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, your hands get black, and you'd think that you wouldn't get dirty, but it was terrible. So I was approached by Tom Cimino, and he offered me a job selling cars at Triangle Chevrolet. And I said, you know, I think I'd like that. So I joined Tom Cimino and went to work. And at this time I had met my wife. So there was no thinking of getting married yet at that time, but that's when I first met her. And selling cars in them days just wasn't making a whole lot of money. And I couldn't handle that anymore. So my brother was working at the Allen Mine, and I asked him if he thought that I could get on up there, and he says, well, you got to go up there and talk to the man. So I went up there daily. Every day. I think Mr. Robinson was the superintendent up there. He says, you don't have to come every day. And I said, well, that's okay. I'll be here every day. Well, he finally got tired of me being up there, and he hired me. And I worked in there one day, And I told my brother, I says, I don't know. I says, this is not for me. I said, I'll be here for 2 years. I says, but that's about it. I said, I'm getting out. And so
What bothered you about it? Were you underground?
That underground, the darkness, people change.
Yeah.
Their personalities change. There was just something about it I just couldn't handle. And so I worked there 2 years and 2 months. And in 1971, I bought my first business. And that's where I started. I started right, you know where Magino's Automotive is at?
Yeah.
I owned that.
Okay.
And they had a house next door, and that's where when I got married in '69, my wife and I moved into that one house, and we ran that. And I worked at the mine for 6 months at the same time owning this business, and then I had to get out. So I got out, ran that service station, and then I got a jobbership, and then I had 2 service stations, and then we went with that all the way up to 79, I believe it was. And in that 79, I had bought that trash service out. And that's what I wanted to back up to. I wanted to back up to that.
Okay.
And so once we ended up taking the city out and taking the county out, then we sold out. Then we went into 24 units of apartments, and that's an ugly job.
Collecting rent.
Collecting rent, and people, some of them people, now not all of them, but there was a lot of them that just had no respect for property.
Right.
The property, they just tear it up. And so we decided, we'd hang on to them. And then I went into manufactured home business. And that was really good all the way up until 2008. And then after 2008, that went away. And then and that's where we went up to all the way to running Lee's for a couple of years, about 1 year and 3 months. And then I went into retirement, couldn't stand it anymore. And then
boom,
boom, we're back into restaurant.
But your past public involvement, you talked about Crossroads, but I know, and maybe I'm missing some things, but you also were a county commissioner.
Right.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, county commissioner, I ran and ran for office in '96, took office in '97. I was together with Mike Osla and Phil Valdez. I call my term in my first term in politics, you want to call it, at a wrong time. It was it was tough. It was really, really tough. It's when you only have 3 people as on a board calling all the shots. The employees were being paid below poverty. I mean, their wages. They qualified for stamps and welfare, and it was the worst operated system that I ever seen in my life. It was just absolutely terrible.
Right.
When I got there, I probably did one thing that maybe I wouldn't have done again, but I had to do it because I had to get some wages behind these people if I wanted to get some good work done.
Right.
And so I gave them a wage increase that was probably the biggest wage increase that they ever had in their lifetime. Still was not as where I would like to see them employees, but we got them a really good wage increase. The foremans and all that, they were, and of course at that time I think that's when the union first came in, and I wasn't real happy about the union being in, but because they've been mistreated for so long, you couldn't blame them for wanting to get something to back them up,
Right.
to help them out, you know. So I didn't fight it. I just went ahead along with it, and but we did some things that were beyond anything that's ever been done before. One of the items was that I went to CCI Incorporated, which is Colorado Counties Incorporated. I went to a meeting up there prior to actually being sworn in. And I talked to a lot of people that were commissioners in different counties and asking questions and trying to find out where am I at here? What am I supposed to be doing? You know, how am I supposed to be doing? So I was asking a lot of questions, and I asked one question to a lady out of Conejo's County. I asked her how much money that they were getting for their roads, building roads and stuff like that. And she said that she was getting something like $1.3 million a year to maintain their roads. And I said, well, how many roads do you have? How many miles of roads do you have? And she says, we have 700 and I think she said 85 miles of county road. And I says, wow. I says, that sounds a lot of money for that. He says, why do you seem so puzzled? I says, well, we have 1,601 miles of county road. I says, and we only get 1.6. She looked at me and laughed a little bit, and she says, I could tell you why you're only getting that amount. And I says, really? I says, how can you tell me that? He says, I'll tell you. Nobody's upgrading your roads. You're not reclassifying your roads. In other words, you have like 4 different roads. A cow trail, okay,
Right.
no maintenance. You got a secondary road, which is maybe bladed once a year. And then you have a primary road, which is most of your roads. It's highly graveled, whitened at a certain amount. And then you have a paved road. He says, and each year, you take this one, bring it up to this one, and this one you bring it up to this one, and this one you bring it up to this one. So that what you're trying to do is increase the quality of your roads. And then, of course, for each one of these roads, you get X amount of dollars per mile, how wide they are, how much gravel you're putting on them, how much paving you got. Well, I had no idea what she was really talking about because I had just never served on it. But Mike Osla, he knew about it because he was the planner director. And I looked at him and he didn't seem to know that. And so I got back home. I went into the mapper because the mapper was taking care of all the county roads and mapping them out. So I asked him about it. And he looked at me and says, no matter what you do, he says, you're only going to get X amount of dollars, and that's all. I says, well, when I got back, I called up a guy named Baker from the state office, and he told me that you get more money. So I told this guy, I talked to this guy, and he says, you get more money. I said, I'm going to sit right here, and I'm going to give you this guy's phone number, and I want you to call him, and I'm going to watch you call him. So he calls him, and he asks him the question. And I could see his eyes moving. And he said, he got off the phone. He says, Tony, you're right. I said, when was the last time that we ever evaluated our roads? He took a look, and it was 20 years.
Ouch.
So I looked at another county. It was Moffett County. Had almost exactly the same amount of roads that we had. And they were getting like $4 million better a year. So that's how much money we were losing.
Right.
You know, we were losing something like 2.8 a year. And So this was the first part, just after we were sworn in. It was the 11th hour to get your roads evaluated, because February the 10th was the day you had to submit them. So I got all the foremans together, and we just did a massive recap, calculated all our roads and what we were doing and how much was gravelled to a primary road and stuff. It probably wasn't done as well as we wanted to, but it brought us $500,000. Brought us $500,000
Okay.
more. So we kept doing that, and we kept getting more money. And I don't know what it is at now, but I'm sure they're probably doing a lot better now.
Yeah.
But that was one of the big things that I was able, because I always go places to find out what I need to know. When people tell me something and it crosses my, what do you want to call it, ingenuity or my thinking, makes me, I have to go look and find out.
Right.
You know, I don't, and if it fits with me, then I don't say nothing. I just don't do nothing.
Okay. Well, Tony, so we can keep moving forward, because we'll sit here all day.
Yeah.
We don't have any coffee right now.
Right.
So what about other public involvement? I mean, you had the Crossroads, you were a county official. Is there any other public involvement that, boards and things like that?
No.
Okay. You're a busy guy, so I can see why, that's pretty good though, what you did. So I'm going to keep moving forward here. Next question. What's your reason for running for city council?
Oh, there's a couple of things. What really started it was where I live on Colorado, 431 Colorado. There was a person walked up to my door, sat on my steps. Then he walked out back to the street and sat on the curb. And then he came back up and sat on my step again. And then he walked around both sides of the house. And then I had to go out there and ask this guy, what is it that you need, or what's going on? And he says, I want to use your bathroom. And I told him, I said, you would have to go down and use the public bathroom. I said, you can't use my bathroom.
Right.
Talking to some older people, not so much the younger people, but more the older people that are afraid to go outside at night after 5 o'clock, to go any place after that time. Hearing stories about a guy and his wife go outside to have a cigarette, and he forgot his cigarettes out there. He went out there to go pick up his cigarettes, and the cigarettes were gone. Talking to some of the employees, when they did this sewer contract, kind of bothered me a little bit, because this community is kind of unique. This city has all their own utilities, and a lot of cities don't have that, and then to contract it out, it bothered me a little bit, because I talked to Jim Fernandez, because he comes into the restaurant quite a bit, and I talked to him about it, and he says, I could have told him that a lot of that stuff was outdated and obsolete, but he says, we didn't have the money to make it work. And he says, they still don't have the money to make it work. And I said, well, what about the education? He says, all my employees were educated. They knew what was going on, and they knew how to get stuff done. So that kind of bothered me. So one day I was cooking there, and it was early in the morning, and I just said, I'm going to run for city council. And they said, you got to be crazy. You're putting in, at that time I was probably putting in 84 hours a week in.
Right.
And he said, well, where are you going to find the time? And I said, well, you make time. You make it work.
Right.
And I says, I'm not going to promise them that I'm going to put 84 hours a week in, but I can make it work. I have what it takes inside to make something work. And I said, I can make it work. I put the right people in place. I said, I can make it work. And so then I started researching a lot of stuff and seeing that all the department heads were gone from all the departments. Bothered me a lot, you know. And so as I studied that, I said, well, how do they get the direction? How do they understand? Because this town is old and there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be replaced. And how do they figure that out? I said, who's there to figure it out? I said, before they had Jim Fernandez there, you know, Sir Water and Gas, and before they had Dave Bernally, you know, that kind of stuff, you know. And that's what gave me the reason why I thought that they need somebody with the experience to go back in there and restructure this.
Was there a second reason? You said there was a couple reasons.
Well, the other reason is that I thought in my mind, I says, how come they have so many of these marijuana places? I don't have a problem with
But you know what, though? That's the next question. So let me just segue
Okay.
into that
Okay.
because you're going to answer the question that I'm about to ask.
Okay.
So as I explained to everybody, and I've been filming for 12 years, so I know a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
And my explanation or analysis is the marijuana is the elephant in the room. A lot of people are for it. A lot of people are against it. And so, because that's where you were going, you know, the question is then, what is your stance on marijuana?
To be very honest with you, I've never had a piece of marijuana in my fingers. I've never smoked one, never in my life. But that doesn't make me say that I'm against it. I make wine, homemade wine.
Right.
I could say ask the guy the same thing about that. He could say I never drank a glass of wine, you know. But all I'm saying is that I'm not for it and I'm not against it. The state of Colorado approved it. It's here. That's the majority. And I believe if the majority, if that's what they want, and if I'm going to serve the people, I have to serve the majority as well as the minority.
Right.
Okay. But the majority rules. That's democracy. Okay. And so I myself feel that we can utilize what we have in marijuana, even though I think we have way too many and than we need. But that's okay. It's done. And I'm not wasting my time or energy on that. Okay.
Right.
What I'm going to waste my time and energy on is changing the way we handle a lot of that stuff, changing where we put that money. Okay. Because I feel that marijuana, as far as the dispensaries, I'm not talking about the grows, I'm talking about the dispensaries. I think the dispensaries in 5 years will be down 3/4. I think 3/4 of them will be gone because I think New Mexico by that time will be open.
Isn't it kind of like you in the trash business? There were several, and then there's one. That's the free market.
Right. And because New Mexico goes in, Clayton, New Mexico will be another Trinidad.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not angry. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I just feel that the way they're utilizing the revenues that are coming in from that, not in a wisely way. I want to be able to, when its stuff goes away to a point, I want to be able to add over here.
And that we're going to get to. That's
Okay.
part of the questions.
All right. So that's kind of where I'm at with the
Okay.
marijuana. I want the people to understand that I'm a Christian, okay, and I believe that a lot of this stuff, if it's used moderately, it's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, and same way with booze. If you use it in a moderate way, it's not a problem. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm at with marijuana.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, you just said something that segues into the next question, being a Christian, and that is, what should we do about the panhandlers and the homeless?
Well, I'll tell you what, that is very difficult. I've tried to, in my mind, how do we do this? So there was a big article in the paper. I think God just sends things in the right time. There was a big article in the Pueblo Chieftain of a panhandlers. One guy went on panhandling, and I don't know if you saw that in the
I
Pueblo
didn't.
Chieftain, but gave a big long story about all these people. Colorado Springs was been fighting this for a long time. So Trinidad is going to be fighting this for a long time. But we could do some things with the panhandlers and the transits. Transits and panhandlers are a very fine line
Right.
of a mental situation, okay? I think a lot of your transits are mentally incapable
Right.
of doing things. So they're out there begging for whatever they can get. But I think we need to put them in their place. In some ways, maybe try to help them, but in other ways, trying to encourage them. In fact, in my restaurant, in the last month, I hired, I'm going to say, 3 different families. Okay. One is a dishwasher, and the other 2 is putting some tile down in my restaurant. And it's strange working with these kind of people because you can't tell them nothing. They have a mind of their own, and you can't, this is the way we do things here, and I want you to do it this way. And so you leave them alone, and they kind of go off of that, and then you go back on and say, no, this is the way I want you to do it.
Right.
And they get irritated. And then before you know it, they don't show up anymore.
Wow.
And I said, why? He came for his last check. I said, why? What happened? Oh, he says, we got other things to do. And that was it, you know.
Let me interject. I'm going to go back to one thing. The thing about the marijuana dispensaries, I have a building that's 131 years old. I know what it takes. The good, and this is my opinion about marijuana dispensaries, is that at least the buildings got fixed up.
Oh, yeah.
And then the thing about the panhandlers and the homeless, to me, isn't this an opportunity for people who say they're Christian to show? I mean, because not all of them, you know, some of them want to hand out and some of them want to hand up. You've given both, it sounds like, a hand up and a hand out.
I'm going to tell you, no matter Christian or non-Christian, these people are very difficult to deal with. It seems like there's an expectancy out there. I think a lot of them feel that they deserve what they have. They have a right to ask, and they're saying that I need this, and your responsibility is to help me, to
Right.
give it to me. There's no respect there. I don't see any of them. The one that I gave the job to had 2 children, and they were in their like 13 to 15, and a wife, and they were living inside of a truck, and they used to panhandle on the corners, and they live in that truck today around the city of Trinidad.
Wow.
Okay, there's several people here that just live in vans and trucks and cars. I bet you there's at least 10, 15 of them
Right.
in this community.
I've had people stop here. This isn't about me. I'll tell you off camera. a few that I've helped that blew up. You know, when it was all said and done, you're thinking you're doing a good thing, and next thing. But I don't want to take away from this is your time. Last question in this segment, and then we'll go into the next segment. And you kind of talked about this, but how much time will you devote to city council?
Hal, I'm going to devote what time it needs.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know how much time it needs, but I'm going to give it what it needs. I'm not a quitter. I don't give up.
Right.
I will make it. I will make it work, and I will do what I have to do to make it work.
Okay.
But I'll give it what it needs.
Okay. Excellent. Tony, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back. We doing okay?
All right.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tom Murphy, and this is Trinidad Now on Trinidad Times Television. We'll be back in a minute. Thank you.